If you're here for the first time, I have blepharitis. This eye is still a little bit red. It's getting better, slower than I want to, but we'll be back to not wearing glasses. But also, if you're here for the first time, my squirrel portrait is wearing glasses, and a hat, so it kind of matches. But anyways, on to the video. What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, continuing my deep dive into my search for the perfect covers album. I am not a fan of covers albums, either one artist covering a bunch of artists covering one artist, and a bunch of artists covering a single album, as is the case of today's covers album. I'm going to review this, and then I'm going to rank it among all the others I've already done in search of the best covers album out there. And today I got the Flaming Lips with a little help from my Fwends, spelled with a W for some reason. And this is their cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the album in its entirety. Props. I got to give them props for having the, I don't know, chutzpah, the foolishness, the whatever it takes to cover this album. Whether or not you think this is the best Beatles album, it is the album that changed the game. It's the game changer. I mean, I think any rock critic or rock historian has to put this album somewhere on a pedestal, somewhere. It is such an important album that probably the two rock geniuses of the 60s, Brian Wilson and Frank Zappa, both felt compelled to somehow react to this in some way. Two people in their own lane, doing their own thing, making music history of their own, and yet they felt compelled to respond to this album. It, again, might not be their best in your ears or your favorite, but it's important. And I think you cover any other Beatles album and you're like, okay, that's fun. This one is, it's something that really a band like the Flaming Lips really can only get away with. I think there's something like 28 guest artists on here, and that is not a joke. I counted them. Miley Cyrus is on here twice, but I think it's 28, and some of them are bands, so if you include each, like My Morning Jacket, I'm not counting all 5 members of them, so there's more than 28 if you count members of bands. Tegan and Sarah are on here. I think I only counted them as one because they're an artist. But yeah, there's a lot of people. And it's an interesting album, but I'm not sure it really works. Because essentially what I come away with feeling like the process behind this album is one thing they do that I think was a smart decision on their point, but that at the same time might not be a smart decision. So I'm confused. Is they kept the melody of every song pretty true. So regardless of who's singing any particular song, it might be Jim James from My Morning Jacket, it might be Miley Cyrus twice, it might be Tegan and Sarah. Who else is on here singing? Grace Potter is on here. Maynard James is on here. So Dr. Dog is on here, and I think one of the more successful tracks. Regardless of who's singing it, they've kept the melody pretty pure. So no matter what's going on musically, you're like, oh, that clearly sounds like song whatever. But what it seems like they did was they went in the studio and they recorded the vocal first, and then they're like, all right, now let's just add sound effects and noise, and let's play with the vocals, and let's slow them down or speed them up or tweak them, or let's add this little interlude between the vocals that isn't on the original, or let's add an opening or a coda or something different. But it really does feel like that was the process for almost every song. Keep the vocals pure and then just build sonic psychedelic chaos around them. This is very much the Flaming Lips in their everything in the kitchen sink philosophy, to just making like almost like bombastic psych noise. And some of it works and some of it doesn't. And I think each song is interesting. I probably go back and listen to this like once a year, thinking I'm going to like it a little bit more. And I'm always kind of engaged in every listen, but when I'm done, I'm kind of exhausted, and I kind of I'm not compelled to go back and re-listen to it until I get in that mood again the following year. So it's an interesting listen. The other thing I wanted to point out was I don't remember. And the best song on here, the one that I think for me is my personal favorite that clearly works the best, is if you were to pick the songs and like I think anybody were to pick the songs and go, which one is going to be the most interesting, this is the one you would put last. And no, it is not Within You Without You. I think that's obvious as the one most people would pick last. They do a decent job of redoing it. The song that is by far my favorite is not the one I would have ever picked to be my favorite. And we will get to that eventually. Sergeant Pepper's opens up, and I think it kind of sets the tone. I mean, it's in the same order of the regular album, so, but Sergeant Pepper kind of sets the tone. Super electronic, weird, spacey. The melody's true. It's just your typical, Flaming Lips chaos. My Morning Jacket comes in, I think, for like the verses or the choruses, and things get a little like slower, rock heavy, but have like a rock vibe. As the song progresses, it kind of just gets weirder and weirder. Oh, Maskus is here from Dinosaur Jr. and coming in with some like really squealing guitar at the end before we get the Billy Shears part. It's an interesting, over-the-top, just sonic assault from the beginning, kind of preparing you for what the rest of the album is going to sound like. With a little help from my friends, we get some chaos to start, just your typical chaotic psych energy from the Lips. But then the melody comes in. It's pretty true, but it's kind of buried underneath there. And they drag this out to like 3.5 minutes, and it just feels like it kind of drags. This one, I'm like, okay, maybe could have hit it hard and left. The guest artists on this are Black Puss and Autumn Defense. Black Puss, P-U-S, Puss. Then we get Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which I kind of like only because it's got Miley Cyrus on vocals, and I like Miley's voice. They kind of stick to the intro, kind of true, with just like a synth dun, that playing that progression. We got some musical trippy moments, but then when we get to the chorus, we go to this kind of bigger, louder, just putting everything to red chorus that I don't think works as well. I think maybe Moby is given the chorus chores and Miley's given like the verse chores. It also kind of drags. It just goes on. It's like 5.5 minutes. Does not need to be that long. It's got some interesting ideas in it, but I just think it just takes too long. But I do like the Miley Cyrus thing. And then the first song that I think legitimately works is Getting Better. Dr. Dog is on this with Chuck English and Morgan Delt. And there's just a nice, weird indie rock vibe. And it's not as over the top production wise, and it's one of the true tracks on there. I think Dr. Dog possibly could have put it on maybe one of their weirder albums, and it would have worked because it's not that much of a sonic assault as much as the other ones. It starts off with this really cool like oscillating drone vibe. We get some mangled keyboard sounds, but then the verses just sound really good, and the Dr. Dog presence just kind of like grounds it in their type of like subtle sort of Beatle-esque indie psych that they do. So I think that one really works. Fixing a Hole, by far the chillest tune yet. The melody's nice. There's a lot of like watery, hazy, druggy production. Like Fixing a Hole, apparently the argument is it's a reference to like you're using drugs and it leaves a hole behind after you inject it and you're fixing that hole. But it does have a dreamy sort of drug-like quality to it, and it kind of works. And I do think it's interesting as I'm going through the songs that are the more iconic songs, like the first 3 songs, I think are some, kind of iconic. You would hear those on the radio. Once we get into quote unquote the deeper cuts, which is a weird thing to say for this album, I think the deeper cuts maybe work a little bit better. But then we get to She's Leaving Home. It's got some really nice kind of subtle electronic beats. The melody is there. This is more like a lo-fi electronic pop version. And the vocalist on this is Phantogram is doing this, and then Juliana Barwick and someone named Spaceface. They're sticking true to the melody, but by the end of the song, I think the details of the story, which I think is pretty compelling. I think this is a good little snapshot of somebody who's, chasing the hippie dream and maybe it doesn't work out so well. I think this is one of the stronger narrative songs on the album in the OG original, but that's kind of lost in the vocals because it's buried beneath all this just like psych production stuff. And though the vocalist is trying to stay true to that storytelling, I think the whole production kind of undercuts the power of the lyrics. Then we get Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, which with all the craziness going on, it's like kind of trippy electronic pop, somehow manages to be less trippy than the Beatles' original version. I think that weird, whimsical, circusy Beatles stuff is trippier than what they're trying to do here. This one I put sounds like it would pop up if like what's his name from Blade Runner went into a nightclub and was chasing like a replicant into a nightclub and there was a band playing, or this would be like a soundtrack in like a Blade Runner type dystopian futuristic society. But it's just not as trippy as the original. I think maybe they dropped the ball on this one. Within Without You has this oscillating drone effect again. There's a female singer with like this really high, almost like soprano voice. They're recreating that sort of like sitar, Eastern psych vibe, but using synths. It kind of works. It kind of creates a nice little vibe. They kind of stick true to the original feel of this, but they just do it with synthesizers. This has someone named Birdflower, and Morgan Delt is back on this. When I'm 64, lots of vocal manipulation doing this. It's like we get a normal line, then a tweaked line, a normal line, then a tweaked line. It's just kind of low-key electronic garage pop. Not too interesting. Then another one that absolutely works fantastic is Lovely Rita. It starts off with like 50 seconds of music that kind of has nothing to do with the song, like these electronic drones and some noises. And then we finally drop into the song, and it's got Tegan and Sarah and then Stardeath and White Dwarfs. I think this is the second highlight. We have yet to get to my highlight. It just really works. The Tegan and Sarah vocals just sound fantastic. The energy towards the end, I think when Stardeath comes in, just has some really good, fun psych pop energy. And Tegan and Sarah just sound weird, but they sound good and they sound trippy. And like this one works. Lovely Rita, I think it pays off. Good Morning also pays off. We get it's like a super tweaked electronic dance version of this, essentially. This is with someone named Zorch, and then Grace Potter and Treasure Animal are on this. It's got some nice like rock energy. There's like an electronic psych mix to it. There's like kind of noises that are always about. This works. Like this run of Lovely Rita, Good Morning, into an abrupt transition into this, out of Good Morning, that isn't as successful as the original album. But the highlight of the album for me, by far, and it almost because what makes it a highlight has nothing to do with the original Sgt. Pepper's, is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, The Reprise. This is with Foxygen and Ben Goldwasser of MGMT. And what they essentially do is they kind of go through the Reprise version, and then at the end of the Reprise version, they drop on like a 3 or 4 minute psych jam that very much sounds like it could have been on like the first MGMT album. Like it could have been at the end of Moon's Fox, what is that name of that song? It's the third song on side B, the Moon and something. That song, it has that kind of psych jam energy. It's really good. It's really trippy. It's really, the Reprise is kind of strange, and then the jam just works perfectly. It has more space. It's still got a lot of weirdness going on because it's got MGMT Foxygen energy, but it works. It's kind of what I wish they had done with a little more of these songs, is let them stretch out in this way instead of just like throwing a whole bunch of clutter production onto stuff. And then that goes into Day in the Life. Miley Cyrus returns. Wayne is actually doing the vocals for the Day in the Life part. He's taken the lead on that. His voice was not the strongest in this era. It's pretty much straightforward with weird noises. And then we just kind of go into this weird droney electronic thing for the middle section, like the Paul section. Miley comes back on vocals, which is the highlight of the section. But this is definitely, this switch into this kind of change of moods is nowhere near as successful as the original. They definitely didn't try to replicate it. I'll give them props for that. But it's definitely not as successful. And then they go back into the sort of the coda. It's an interesting listen. Like I can't say it's a bad listen. I can understand why somebody would like this. To me, it's just like they're trying too hard at times. There's just way too much stuff going on in some of these songs. And it did just, in a lot of instances, I just wanted to go back and listen to the original just because it's a perfect album. Like they kind of nailed it so well with, so many of the first 3 songs especially. I'm like, okay, this is why the Beatles were the Beatles. They knew what to edit and what not to do and all that kind of stuff. But props for Flaming Lips for trying it. Yeah, it's an interesting effort. Where would I rank it if I had to put it among the other ones? Well, I gave it a 50%. I think there's a handful of songs on here that are pretty good. I am I am engaged in the beginning of each song. It just at some point I kind of check out. So I have it kind of at number six. Right, but it's below the Kinks, which was at 50, and Rush, which is at 50, just because I think those have actual, just more consistent from start to finish. But the Getting Better was good, and then the whole run of Lovely Rita, Good Morning, the Sergeant Pepper reprise is fantastic. There are moments almost in every song which are like good, but then there are moments where I'm like, okay, this is too much. Like almost every song would get a 50%. Maybe a number of them I just don't think work. But then a couple of them do work, and overall, I think it's just a balanced. It's kind of like, I just kind of don't know how I feel about this album. But yeah, those are my thoughts on this. I would love to hear somebody like advocate this in a much stronger sense, but I don't know if there is anybody that really would. I'm interested. I would love to hear them do something. I would love to have them write an album like this in which they already had 12 melodies as in, is it 12 songs in here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah. 13, I guess. In which they had this number of songs that had melodies this compelling and strong, and then built this chaos around it to see if like I liked it more. But knowing where the original melodies come from and knowing that they're just, Beatles already kind of nailed it and even made it trippier than, the Lips are trying to do. Yeah, I'm just rambling at this point. But yeah, that's where I would rank it. So, anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Would love to hear your thoughts on this album. And then, yeah, we might hit another Lips album again. Or maybe not. We might move on. Who knows? I don't know. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.